I want to talk about the difference between healthy bickering in a relationship and something that is really dysfunctional communication, dysfunctional arguing, because it's really not uncommon for someone in an emotionally destructive relationship to share their experience about an isolated event in their marriage or relationship with someone who is in a fairly healthy marriage or relationship, and to hear the comment, well, everyone argues. The truth is there is a difference. There's a difference between functional, productive arguing and emotionally destructive arguing. And I want to be able to paint a picture that's really clear for you today, giving you a lot of examples of what that dysfunction looks like and what healthy arguing looks like and why you're engaging in it in the first place. And I want to give you some practical steps to take. So stick around, you won't want to miss this. If you're new here, I'm Ketra Thompson, and I'm the creator of the Confident Connection Method, where I incorporate an entire program that puts together deep hypnotherapy work to reframe the subconscious beliefs that are driving these unwanted behaviors, coupled with mind coaching and relationship coaching, so that you can get the results that you want more rapidly than anything else, in my opinion. So if you'd like to learn more, you can check out the link in the description below, where you can set up a completely complimentary consultation call where you and I can chat and we can get to the heart of what's going on with you, and I can make my best recommendation. Now, the biggest sign of really dysfunctional relationships and arguments, emotional abuse, all of that, is that there is a big presence of cognitive dissonance. Now, cognitive dissonance is when two realities don't match. What someone says doesn't match what they do, or sometimes they do things that don't match what they do the next time. There's just a lot of confusion where your brain's kind of trying to figure out who is the real version of this person? What's real here? And so they're saying one thing and they're doing another. And when that's happening, there are some very specific behaviors that are almost always present. So it's a little bit of a long list, but I really want to dive into this because if it's happening with you, I think you're going to resonate with this. So the first thing is there is a push-pull dynamic. Now, a push-pull dynamic is like mini love bombing. Usually when you get into these relationships, there's a lot of love bombing in the beginning, kind of adoring the other person and treating them extravagantly and well and lots of affection. And once there's a commitment level, that sort of gets taken away. But as the relationship progresses, the mini love bombing still happens. When they want you close, when they want something from you, they're going to do these little mini love bombs where they do tell you what you want to hear, and they do give you what you want, and they do, adore you for a minute. And then maybe 2 hours later, or maybe the next day, they're picking a fight over nothing, over something that seems silly to pick a fight about. It just doesn't even make sense to you. And that might go on for a couple days, and they might kind of do the little mini love bomby thing for a couple days. They might ignore you for a little bit, and then they might pick another fight. And so there's a push-pull dynamic that creates a lot of confusion and kind of destables any trust in the relationship's foundation. The next thing that happens is they withhold a lot. They withhold in lots of different ways, but they ignore you when you speak sometimes. They aren't answering you when you speak, like you just kind of don't exist. They're missing your bids for connection and acting like you just aren't there at all. They're withholding the connection that you're trying to get from that other person. And they also counter. So when they're countering, they're kind of playing the devil's advocate. So this isn't when they're ignoring you, right? This is when they're kind of engaging in the fight, the bickering, the arguing process. They're playing the devil's advocate and they're opposing all your opinions. Even if an opinion you're sharing is something that they once expressed that they agreed with, they will oftentimes disagree when you share it. Because it's not about the conversation. It's about creating the distance with the person they're with. They want to pick these fights. They want to create some level of argument because a lot of these arguments feel like they shouldn't even be happening and you're not even sure why they are. And so this countering and this playing devil's advocate becomes a way of creating that distance and that argument. Now, the other thing that you'll notice is that when you're in this unhealthy dynamic, there is a lot of blocking and diverting. This is when they refuse to communicate. You bring something up and they refuse to engage in something healthy with you. So they might say things like, you know what I mean, get off my back. They're just very dismissive and they're blocking the conversation and they're diverting it to someplace else. And so you don't feel like you can ever really get traction or you can't get resolve from what you're trying to discuss. Now, very similar to this blocking, diverting is blame shifting. Now, blame shifting is when you share what you feel. Like maybe you're saying, I feel really closed off from you right now, or like you're someplace else. And they might say, don't attack me like that. They might really make you feel like what you're saying is stupid and dumb for even bringing it up. And they attack back because they don't want to engage with the thing that you've brought up. The other thing that there's usually a lot of is judging and criticizing. And this is when things get kind of global, where they say, you always do this, you never do that. And they don't look at the situation at hand for what is being presented. They are making you into someone, a narrative in their mind that always does this thing, that never does the other thing. And they're kind of dismissing anything between those times, which nobody ever always does one thing or never does another thing. And so it's a way of not having to look at what you bring up. They also trivialize things. Now, trivializing is something that can be very hurtful. So let's say you accomplish something at home and you share it with them. I remember a specific example myself. I reorganized and cleaned the whole pantry and put bins and labeled everything and was told things like, it should have just been kept that way from the beginning. Or it must be nice to have time to do that while I'm busy. Like it's very dismissive and trivializing your accomplishments. They refuse to give you praise for anything. And you're just trying to share your world. You're trying to share what you did. You're trying to communicate and connect about this thing, and they will not give you praise. So the other thing is kind of the opposite of putting you on a pedestal at all. These kinds of things try to bring you down. So the other thing that will be happening is that they'll be undermining you. Now, whenever you express a thought, an opinion, they'll say things like, who asked you? Or, the things you put effort into that you think are exciting. And you'll say, I'd love to do that. I'd love to start this business. I'd love to have this thing. I'd love to go to this place. And they'll say things like, I don't know anyone who would want to do that. I don't know anyone who would want to go there. I don't know anyone who would want to start a business like that. They're really undermining you, the expression of you, your dreams, your thoughts, and shutting you down. They also use threatening, and this is very manipulative. If I can't get this from you, I'll get it somewhere else. Or don't push me, I won't stay in this relationship. And so instead of approaching something with kindness and curiosity, they use power and threatening in order to get what they want. Sometimes there's also name calling. Now, obvious bad things that someone would call bad names are pretty obvious. They stand out. But sometimes this also includes using maybe a term of endearment in a negative way. Using honey or sweetie, or even like, yes, dear. They're using a term of endearment, but you know that it's derogatory, that it isn't said or meant kindly. And the other big thing that's usually present in dysfunctional, emotionally destructive relationships is denying or forgetting. So they basically have no recollection of the argument you're talking about, no recollection of the conversation that you had, no recollection at all. I never said that. We never talked about that. That never happened. I have no idea what you're saying. It's absolute gaslighting. But this denying and forgetting is a thing that stops you in your tracks because you know you had that conversation. You remember the specifics. You know exactly what transpired. And when someone's just flat out denying it, how do you prove that? How do you make your point? How do you hold them accountable for what they agreed to that now they're saying they don't even remember having the conversation in the first place? It's very manipulative. And the other thing that is oftentimes present is ordering. They are ordering you to do things. They are not asking you. They are telling you, get this shit out of here. Move your stuff out of my way. Get it out of the hallway. Whatever it is, they're not asking you. And so there's a power dynamic shift where they act like they are over you and can tell you what to do. And they don't take into consideration that you are an autonomous human being who might have other things going. They're not asking, hey, when you get a chance, could you take care of this thing? They are just telling you to do it and do it now. All of this behavior will eventually cause you to question your reality. It will cause you to walk on eggshells. It'll make you afraid to bring anything up. You don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to say anything. You don't want to ask for those bids for connection. You don't want to go give them a hug. You don't want to connect in any way because you have no idea what version of them you're going to get. It's too unpredictable. They are picking fights about things that aren't even fights. So you don't even know when it's safe because they're creating distance whenever they want you to get away from them. And distance making is a big part of this. When someone is really afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of being seen, they create distance in their relationships so that you don't have to get that close. And once they miss you enough and they've had enough distance, then they kind of do the little mini love bombing thing and they pull you back in. And then you go, oh yeah, this is the person I fell in love with. This is what I like. Okay, maybe I was just over, making too big of a deal about those other things. And then before you know it, there's distance making that's happening again. And so this push-pull thing creates a dynamic inside the other partner that creates a lot of fear and a lot of dysregulation in their nervous system. So I want to share what you can do about this, but first I want to talk about what healthy arguing looks like. Arguing is healthy in a relationship. It is how we grow. It is how we bond. It is how we actually build deeper connections. And so healthy arguing is sharing respectfully. It's listening with curiosity. And even when we don't listen with curiosity, even the times maybe we do get a little defensive or we do react in a way that we wish we hadn't, we come back and we repair after we've been triggered. That person would come back and say, hey, I didn't handle that well. I took that personally and I shouldn't have. You were just trying to communicate with me. So in the future, here's what I'm going to do. They take responsibility for their behavior and tell you how they're going to change it. They might ask you questions about what you need from them to do differently in the future so they can be self-reflective and they can work on these parts of themselves. And so repair is about action and accountability. And it's important that whenever there is a rupture that we have healthy repair. It's not the argument that's so toxic. It's the fact that we need to know how to repair. And so when that's happening, that's a really good sign. And part of the repair is seeing the change in the future, not just hearing, oh, I'm so sorry, not going to do that again. That'll never happen again. But then it happens again. And then I'm sorry. And then it happens again. And then I'm sorry. Like there has to be a movement of the dial toward functioning the way that they are saying they will function or getting the help they need to learn how to function that way. And so it's about taking responsibility and seeing that the other person is willing to say, yes, I did that. I'm sorry. I'm going to work on that. I'm not going to do that again. Now, when it comes to teasing in a healthy relationship, teasing can be really fun, but teasing is never going to be about those things that people are most sensitive about. When you know each other, you know what your spouse is most sensitive about, where their deepest wounds are. You've had enough time to be curious about those things, and so you're not going to tease about their biggest insecurities. You're going to tease in a more playful way, in a more bantering way where you're going to have a smile on your face and they are too. And, you're going to be lovey in the process of teasing. And so it's a very different way. Instead of making a joke at someone's expense, you're actually going to be teasing in this very soft, sweet way, not in this negative, damaging way. So let's talk a little bit about why we end up in these relationships to begin with. Now, our subconscious programming is a big part of this. So we are actually programming our subconscious mind from birth to age 7. We're in the theta brainwave state, which is a hypnotic state, and we are programming our subconscious. Now, our subconscious mind drives over 95% of everything we think, feel, and do. So when we're programming that, we are in a very vulnerable state where we need to be relying on our caregivers. We cannot lose connection with our caregivers because it will mean literal death for an infant or small child, right? So while we're being programmed, we are also desperate to keep those connections with our caregivers. And oftentimes we learn that we get the most affection and love and nurturing when we are people pleasing, when we're jumping through the hoops, when we're doing what we're told, when we're not questioning. And so if we get programmed that way, or if we even have some abandonment issues that come along, where maybe a parent dies, maybe parents get divorced, maybe one moves away, we have this abandonment. Now that need for connection just gets even heightened. Like, oh, I thought I was doing everything right and I still lost this person I need. And so we learn to people please in order to keep the love and connection that we want in life. And a lot of times this is a desire to be saved. Now, women get labeled with that term a lot. You're like, oh, you just want him to save you or whatever. But it actually happens in men a lot too, where men are lacking in some area that they really don't function well in, and they want to be saved by someone who will call the shots. And so you see that a lot, where maybe a very, very passive man ends up marrying a very, very controlling woman who calls all the shots, tells him what he can and can't do, is a bridge to the other relationships in his life, and controls and dominates. And so that is also a result of being conditioned into that people-pleasing mode. And women do it too. Women are oftentimes conditioned into the people-pleasing because you're supposed to be the good girl and look a certain way and behave a certain way, and that's how we're going to stay safe. And so we're trying desperately to do two things when we stay in relationships that are actually emotionally destructive. We are trying to get back to how we felt when we first met them, when they were love bombing and they were making us finally feel seen and heard and valued in the world. And we're also trying to get closure on our childhood stories, the things that didn't go well. We think if we can make it go well with this relationship and with this person, then finally I'll get the happy ending I'm looking for. Finally, I'll feel worthy. I'll feel valued. And I'll prove to myself that I am lovable. And so there's a lot of subconscious things going on, even if you aren't thinking those words consciously. And so what can we do about this? Because our subconscious mind is driving so much of how we function, yet we don't have access to it. So in the hypnosis process is really the primary way we have access to the subconscious mind. It allows us in there so that we can reframe those beliefs that are driving our unwanted behaviors, driving our insecurities, driving our reactions. And sometimes we find ourselves having found the courage to leave a relationship like this, but then not knowing what to do so that we don't end up in another one and feeling paralyzed by fear because we don't want to do that again. Maybe we're broken, our picker is broken, we don't know what to look for, we don't know what we're doing, and fear takes over. And so it's really important to do that deep subconscious work so you don't repeat the pattern, so that you do connect with your self-worth and that you disconnect from letting their behavior determine your worth or your value. And so the first thing you could do on your own is take notes. When things happen in a relationship like this, get out of the situation, go to a quiet, private place and take some notes. Even if you think they are going to be found, put them in a locked note in your phone. And it's really important because when we're going into fight or flight, what happens is all the blood in the frontal lobe of our brain gets pushed out into our large muscle groups, preparing us to fight or run or flee or whatever. And so we get brain fog. And then if we wait too long, we don't actually remember with clarity what those conversations were. So it's important to take notes as quickly as possible so that you can reflect back later and get some clarity about what happened, so that the brain fog doesn't keep you in more confusion, in more cognitive dissonance. And so the other thing you can do is just decide that you need to get out of there, right? It's easier said than done, but when you get off the roller coaster, you do start to get some discernment about how you're feeling different. And then you get back into the presence of someone like that. Maybe they love bomb you back in. And then if you're noticing, it doesn't take too long before they do the push dynamic again and pick a fight over nothing. And you go, oh yeah, That's why I got out of there, right? So you want to approach these things with a lot of curiosity and presence, just noticing the details. You're collecting data. And so you also want to stop over-functioning. You want to stop over explaining. You have explained, and you think, if I choose a better time of day, if I choose a better tone of voice, if I'm really careful, I can be heard, because any reasonable person will get it if I explain this right. But they don't get it. And you keep over functioning. And they keep getting what they want, and you keep feeling abandoned emotionally, or even physically sometimes. So you have got to be your first priority in your life. You've got to be your top priority. Some other signs that this is kind of happening are about the way you feel inside. So I remember being in this really toxic relationship and just feeling icky in public. Like, he would be really sweet, like at church, arm around me, hand holding, sweet, attentive. And it was so opposite of what was happening at home that it felt so disingenuous. It felt icky. And when you're feeling like this is fake, this is a facade, that's a big sign that you're in something destructive. The other thing is when you start to notice a tightening in your body, that's a really good sign. I remember replying to an email on my phone and then hearing one time the garage door opened, so I knew he was home. And immediately I got a knot in my stomach. I felt tight inside, and I thought, oh my God, if I don't give him all of my attention the second he walks in the door, he's going to punish me for the rest of the night. He's going to pick apart every single little thing. I'm going to pay the price. And it was a realization of like, this is not okay to feel this way. It's not healthy. And so if you're feeling that way and you're walking on eggshells, your body is going to give you some indications that you really need to pay attention to. And so notice these things, take notes about them, and remind yourself that in a healthy relationship, people want to repair. They want to repair. They want to be curious. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They aren't going to use the things you've shared with them against you in a vengeful way. And so taking stock of what your experiences are can really help you get some clarity. And of course, again, if you want to do that deep subconscious work, set up that consultation call where we can really dive into what's going on with you, and I can help you really just connect to who you are again, the real you, before you got all this confusion going on. Because your subconscious mind is incredibly powerful, and when you're fighting against it, it feels like a constant battle. So of course, like every time, I really appreciate it if this content resonated with you, that you would click like and subscribe so you can be notified every time I post a new video. And if there's anything you'd like me to cover or any other questions you might have, please feel free to put them in the comments below. I love to read those, and I try my very best to respond to everyone. So until next time, I hope you curate a life by your own design.